Gordon. This morning we're going to show rebuilding the vacuum pump on a 300D turbo, a late model. They fit in either a 300SD or a 300D, but this 5-cylinder diesel engine from 82 to 85 had a what we call a late model vacuum pump. The way you tell it is it's just got one line coming out of it, and when that vacuum pump goes bad, of course, what you lose is your power brakes, and you lose on a 300D anyway your door lock mechanism. It's vacuum operated, and a lot of the little diaphragms that run the air conditioning and heating system are lost, and so forth. So you know, once that vacuum pump goes out, you need to replace it or rebuild it very, very quickly, because you don't want to do without vacuum very long. It's not that the car won't get you home, but you wouldn't want to drive it very long that way. It usually gives you a little warning. It'll give you a day or two before it goes completely bad. But you'll notice that the power brakes don't work very well when it starts to go bad. And you could, of course, check it with a little gauge. Just take that line off and run the car and see if you're pulling any vacuum there. Now, what I always do is pull the radiator out, because there are 6 bolts that hold that thing on there, and what you need is a little 6 millimeter, or I'm sorry, it's a 5 millimeter hex head to pull the 6 bolts out. And then, of course, you're also going to need just a 19 millimeter wrench, and we can start with that nut that's on the top. So first we need to pull that line off, and then once we pull that line off, all we have to do is pull those 6 bolts out. But you got to really be careful, because those hex head bolts usually are filled with grease. And so what I always do is take an ice pick and, as best I can, clean the grease out of those hex head bolts, because if you run one of those off, you're going to have a mess trying to get it out of there. And in addition to that, once I clean all those out, I take that 5 millimeter on the end of a little extension, and what I do, just to make sure that it seats, is I take a hammer and just drive it in there to make sure that the thing's seated on the bottom, and then, of course, the bolt will come right out. So we're going to pull those 6 bolts off, and then that vacuum pump will just come right off, and then we'll show how to rebuild it. Take that and just make sure that thing is seated in there. I really don't want to take an easy out. Those bolts are in ugly positions to try to work an easy out in there and to get a stripped off hex head. It's not that they're that tight. They're pretty small, but nonetheless, I don't want to take a chance. So we'll come back when we get this off. It's just these 6 bolts. Okay, now I've got that last hex bolt out of there, and this vacuum pump's easy. It just comes right out of there now. And that belt is kind of in the way, but I think I can get it out, I hope, without taking that belt off. Okay, this is the thing that we were interested in rebuilding, and we'll show you how we do that anyway. Okay, and let's take a look at this vacuum pump now that we've got it out. There's just a cam that drives this little pivoted bar, if you will. So the cam, every time it comes around, it pushes a little piston, and of course there's a real heavy spring right there. So it's pushing that piston up and down. That's what's causing the vacuum action. But the part of the pump that we need to rebuild is under these screws, and I've already loosened them. And so if we take these screws off, we're probably going to find that it's pretty dirty under here, and we want to pay real close attention to these check valves. So we're going to make sure we get a picture of those so you can see which position they're in. You see there are 3 check valves under there. Now there's some seals, and you see how nasty this thing is. What we've got to do is replace these check valves, these 3 check valves, and then we got to take this piston off, and you see how nasty that is, just from oil and dirt and so forth, because it runs in engine oil essentially, or there's engine oil on this side of it from that timing chain. We're going to replace these 3. We're going to replace the O-ring seals, and we're going to replace the seal on that pump. Now we have a kit here, a rebuild kit, and it's got all the parts that we need. And so we're going to take this pump apart. This particular rebuild kit is, you can see the numbers on there. It costs 40 or 50 bucks and have all the parts that you need to rebuild it. So we're going to kind of clean it up as we go and take these things out, but pay close attention to those check valves. They have to be put back in there in that way. If you get them in there backwards, the pump won't work. So these two, I'll set them like that, the way they came out, went down, if you will, and this one went up. So that's the easy part. Now this got O-rings in there that we want to replace. So that's an O-ring for that one. There's an O-ring for that one. There's an O-ring for that one. In addition, there's a larger O-ring around the whole thing. And finally, we need to take that off. Now I believe that looks like a 10. No, it's an 8. I thought it was a 10. It's an 8 millimeter, I believe. Let me get That's the reason I had that. Now this nut that held that piston on there was an 11 millimeters, kind of an odd size. I took it off of there, and it disconnects from a shaft that's connected onto a spring, or I'm sorry, it's got a spring underneath it. And you can see that there are several holes around here. And so what I did, it kind of stuck. I mean, right away, the spring moved the stud, the shaft, back away from that, so it dropped down just by force of the spring. But the piston was stuck in the cylinder. So what I did is just take like an ice pick and poke through those holes and pop the piston out. Okay, so we've got to replace the ring around this piston. It's really a fiber ring. And in the process, we're going to clean all of this up really well. So before we put this thing back together, we're going to clean it up, and we're also going to put it together with a light coating of oil. And I'm going to take these dirty gloves off here in a minute and put some clean ones on so that I don't get any dirt, fiber, residue of any kind when I put this thing together, because it'll just sort of tear it up. But you see, the idea is we replace the piston. Now my experience is that the piston is, the spring is very, very strong, and it's hard to get that bolt pushed up there. And so what I have is a special jig, and all it is a piece of steel. But I mount it to the back of here like this, and then this particular bolt is threaded onto this piece of steel. And so it pushes that stud down, it depresses that spring so that it will just press that stud far enough. And you see, I can't get it, now I've gotten it kind of out of there, but it's not difficult to get back in right now. But I can't get that stud pushed up far enough to attach to this piston unless I have this special little jig device here. So we'll show you how that works once we get it all cleaned up. Now my experience, as I said, I've got this all cleaned up now, is I can't get that stud up far enough. So I've devised a little jig that goes through two of the holes, the mounting holes for the vacuum pump, but I've threaded a big stud through there that hits right near the cam on that arm. And it doesn't take a lot of force, but that spring is such that you don't have enough hands to get this thing assembled. So if you turn this, we can watch that stud, of course, being driven out, and I can adjust it as I go. But all I want to do is drive that stud far enough to where I can mount the piston. I'm driving now that spring, and you can feel it when it starts to get tight. Just need it out there far enough. And I want to put some light oil on there. And I really ought to take the gloves off for this. Just because I want this thing to be really, really clean. I want to put it all together with some light oil. Might need to drive that out just a little more. Now you see I drove that stud down far enough to where I could get that thing started, and then I can just tighten it up. And now you see if I back off, of course the spring lets the piston return down. You can see it moving down in the shaft, and I've got it all mounted with some light oil. Okay, so now I've got it loose, and now I just take my little mounting bolts off. They don't have to be too tight. And now you see, remember I laid the little check valves out the way they came out of there. So that one goes up, and I've cleaned this all up. So that one goes up. This one goes down. And this other one goes down. And now this O-ring just goes on there like that. Now, the way we put this gasket on there is we set it down in place, but you got to be careful. See, it pops out. So what we do is we set it on that check valve, and we slowly hold it down, push it down, and rotate it like this, holding the gasket in place as we go. So that, see, for example, over here, we have to make sure, you can see I got it in the lip all the way around by just rotating it that way, and then as soon as we get a couple of screws in it, we're okay. Now there's no gasket on this thing. It's just metal to metal. I just use Permatex. I don't like silicone on this, so I just use a Permatex coating, and then it's just got these 6 hex bolts. So it's just a matter of putting it back together now. Nothing particularly secret about it. Just clean both surfaces and make sure you don't strip out those hex bolts. Make sure you get the, of course, get the little outlet on top. I always like to start the easy ones on top first. Usually tighten 2 down and snug the rest of them. Now, as soon as we get these back, of course, we're going to put the radiator, and then we're done.